Hi, hello, and welcome to the Tuk Community Voices podcast. I'm your host, Rustam, and for those of you who've just joined today, we at Tuk create communities, and we basically help families, we help cities, and we help anybody who wants to build a better, more vibrant community and help each other. Neighbors helping neighbors. That's what we do. Today, I'm super excited because I have someone who's been really helpful to our community and to me personally. He's become a good friend, and he's someone who I look forward to when I come to our co-working space at Hula. So let me introduce you to Will.
Thank you, Rustam.
Will is an amazing person who does a lot of things. He wears multiple hats. He's a business consultant. He's also very good with developing products. But what I really like him the most for is being a strong connector and being a strong catalyst for the whole ecosystem of entrepreneurs and service providers that we are in. So, Will, maybe we'll start with give us a little bit of introduction. We have a lot of folks who would love to know you better, and tell us what got you motivated, what got you started.
So let's see. Long story, tried to make it concise. I grew up in a very small rural town in central Vermont, family farm. In my early 20s, I left that and started working in manufacturing in the Upper Valley. It was a wood stove factory. Got to know the owner more, started working more and more with the engineers there, discovered how much my problem-solving skills that had developed from working on the farm and working with very limited resources and how to solve problems on the fly became really applicable in a manufacturing sense and setting, and product development led from there. So prototyping at a wood stove factory led to engineering schools at Vermont Technology College, later led to careers in engineering around the country in Virginia and Chicago, Pacific Northwest, always leaning a bit more towards the product side as I realized more and more that I loved falling in love with the problem.
Wow.
And especially the problem and how it comes back to human needs and the needs of the people that you're working to serve. So later, my work at University of Vermont in technology transfer, this was where I discovered that bridging that gap between technology and research that was happening within the university, within laboratories at UVM, how do you take those great ideas and work with those brilliant innovators to bring that out into the world, to have a practical, real impact with communities, with society, with industries. And from there, spun out my own consulting firm doing this work, which then led into more business coaching and consulting, working with early stage entrepreneurs, maybe some who've been in business for 20 years and are now really working to evolve their business into something new, or with folks that this may be the first time that they're starting a business and needing to understand what that journey looks like, what resources are available along the way, and then throughout that process, often pulling on skills from my own past experience in
Wonderful.
engineering and project management, product development, like you referred to. So it's really allowed me to connect with a pretty broad community in this space.
Yeah, and Will, you've been amazingly generous with that. So for those who don't know, Will, you're also a mentor and advisor at Launch VT.
That is true.
And that's how we met. And Launch VT is, of course, a wonderful startup incubator in Vermont for startups and for entrepreneurs. And one of the things, Will, that stood out is how generous you were with advice and how authentic you were with calling a spade, and sometimes telling people. So, what got you pulled towards this founder entrepreneur sector rather than offering your set of skill sets to, let's say, a larger corporate? What gets you excited about working with entrepreneurs or smaller startups?
Creativity,
Oh,
I would
wow.
say. Getting to work with really creative people who are building something that is, maybe it doesn't have a form yet, and you're working to discover what that form is. Or you're really asking the fundamental question of, is this a problem? And is this the right solution for that problem? So I like being able to work with creative people from across different industries. I like understanding the problems that you yourself are excited about solving and then helping to find those resources. I find that really
brilliant.
satisfying, the treasure hunt of finding that.
And that's a natural problem solving in some ways. And often enough, a lot of founders, they don't have a chance to step out of ops and the work they're doing to look at sort of a higher view of what they're solving. So I think that's where people like you are super important, right? And I define you personally as a catalyst because I think you just people are doing good work, but you just accelerate that, right?
Yes.
So is that definition something that you'd like to go by, and does that define what you do day to day?
I haven't used that before to define myself.
I give it to you for free.
I appreciate that. No, I like that, and I think there is a lot that I associate with that in a very positive way for the work that I do, in that someone may have come to that solution at some point, but would it have taken longer to reach that point?
Exactly.
Or to find that connection or the right expertise within the community that they needed in order to take that step with their business. But it might have taken a lot longer to find that on the side of how to connect people with resources.
Correct.
Or to discover even about what they themselves want to build as a company, their own values and their understanding of even the lifestyle that a founder wants out of their future. And
Absolutely.
A business, if you are starting a business, it's kind of like starting a family in a way. It has a huge impact on your life and your lifestyle, as I'm sure you know.
You can say that again. And Will, so a lot of folks who might be listening to us are starting something or thinking of starting something. I just maybe walk us through the process that you follow, or if there is some method to the madness, right? Like if I come to you with a raw idea,
Yes.
right? What does Will do?
Well, let's start with just the first few steps. So for one thing, I always like to start by understanding, like I was saying about a lifestyle, what is that founder's desire for their lifestyle? What do you want to see in your own life in the next 3 to 5 years? Because that can have a significant impact on what type of business you are creating. So it's maybe a bit of an unexpected question, but I like to ask founders, what do you personally want? What do you personally want to see in your life in the next 3 to 5 years? Do you want to create a business where you are devoting 40 or 50 hours a week into that business, into that idea, because it is the thing that lights you up and makes you excited to get up in the morning and you want to do that? Or is it where you want to create a business that allows you to engage maybe 10 or 15 hours a week, and the rest of the time maybe you're putting into a social work or a social program, or even into your own exploration, be able to semi-retire, or maybe you want to develop an idea, sell or license that idea, and then move on to create something entirely different. These are very different lifestyles and very different outcomes.
So starting with what the founder's intention.
Start with what the founder
that's
wants.
Number one. That's awesome.
That's number one. And then the second, of course, is you have a brilliant idea. You have an innovation you want to bring to the world. You have a brilliant new technology. The next question is, of course, who does this matter to? What is, and to use the technical term in the field, what is the value proposition for this? And is this a value proposition that we can validate in the market? Is there a way to test not necessarily the technology behind your innovation or the process behind your innovation, but simply the value behind it?
And who it's for.
Exactly. And who it's for, who your audience is, and to be able to know that this is a solution that people desire and it's solving a real problem. And it's so often easy to fall in love with an idea or with the technology or with the process and to just go right past that question into building something because it's exciting and you want to build it, you want to see this become real. But you have to start by asking, who is this for?
So personal, what is your motivation and interest in this? Number two, what's the value prop in the customer segment?
Exactly.
Is there anything else that sort of validates?
You start with those because you have to understand your value proposition and the founder's own personal desires before your next step.
So Will, you've obviously helped a lot of folks individually. And what motivated you to start thinking of this as more of a product that you could offer?
I think it was seeing the same problem come up over and over, and it was a relatively small one actually. The thing that I noticed was that there are actually an abundance of resources, of expertise, of talent in this region of Vermont, for example, northern New England, but let's just start with Vermont. And very often, one of the simplest, low lift, but very high value that I could provide to a founder or a business owner that I had a conversation with, started to work with, to coach, was simply helping them to connect with resources and expertise that already existed, that they simply hadn't made a connection with. And these kinds of connections are happening all the time. All of the business hubs, community hubs throughout the state, everyone has their list in their head of their go-to people, their expertise in all these different fields when you're talking business, whether it's branding or data management or IT or sales or website design. So many people have a go-to person, but if you don't have someone on that list with yourself, you have to reach out to someone.
Correct.
And if they don't know someone, they begin reaching out to another point.
And that's
Is there a way to smooth that process?
And that's the reason I was asking you, because I wanted to link us with what Will is embarking on, is building this wonderful directory and system, which he calls Connectory, which is going to be launched to the world. And Will, I think this also revalidates what you said, the stepwise process. Like, you first find out what a person wants.
Yes.
And you help them fine tune the value prop and the customer segment. But then this is the third thing that you do really well, which is you connect. You don't just stop at an advice, and you actually go ahead and you connect. And I can say that with confidence because Will has been doing that with me, is you'll actually say, hey, your idea makes sense for this market. Here's a connection which you do. So I'm super excited that, Will, that you're taking the next step in productizing it, having been a product guy myself. And also you've thought about this wonderful idea, Connectory, which you've been tackling us about. Tell us a little bit more. I mean, what is the problem? You mentioned what problem you're trying to solve. What is Connectory? How do we get to it? What do we expect from it? And what's the value prop?
Right. So the Connectory is simply an online directory, and it's built in collaboration with our community partners. So those community partners are the hubs throughout the state, places like Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies, Black River Innovation Campus, NVDA, even some of the capstone organizations, CVOEO, all of the places that business owners and entrepreneurs go to with questions. And they're looking for help, they're looking for resources. And the realization was that all of these community partners, all of these organizations that are helping entrepreneurs every day answering these questions, they have these lists of resources, of expertise, and they do incredible work to be catalysts, to come back to that word, to speed up that process of helping people find the solutions that they needed. But no one's list can be complete,
of course,
at the same time. And so if, for example, someone comes to me and says, hey, I need a person that can do this particular type of data management. If I don't already have someone in mind or in my own contact list, then I start reaching out to other community partners in my list. I reach out to Chris at Black River Innovation Campus, or I reach out to Rachel at CVOEO, and I say, hey, do you know someone who can do this for this business? And that back and forth can take at least a couple of days. Sometimes it can take weeks to find that solution. And in that time, maybe the business has lost money because it couldn't find that opportunity. Maybe they found someone who was out of state that can do that work, but maybe doesn't understand the context nearly as well. Or maybe the opportunity passes entirely.
Makes sense.
And so the idea was, we have all of these community partners throughout the state. What if each of them can provide their lists, their expertise, their resources, and help us to build a directory that is freely accessible for these businesses and these entrepreneurs?
Wonderful. I mean, when I heard of it, Will, and thanks for explaining that so well, I thought of it in very three simple terms, right? One is context setting, right? What do you need?
Yes.
Is often enough not an easy question.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of journeys of an entrepreneur to be able to articulate what they really need versus what they really need, right?
That's truly true.
And second is vetting. I think that to me also, I would appreciate an introduction from Will, or an introduction from Hula, or an introduction from LaunchVT, compared to looking it up on Google. right?
Right.
Or a Google 5 stars, because we all know how those systems can be created to see.
Right, the curation is so important, and the
So I
trust
think the
in that
trust,
community.
and the third is taking the friction away from it. I think that's important. So that's how I looked at it when the first time I heard you. I think it was a couple of months back.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, this is interesting. And you are right. All these organizations do sit on a treasure load of contacts and relationships. So to a lot of folks who might be thinking of this and saying, hey, this is still a directory, I could get to it, or I could get directly to Chris at Brackever.
Sure.
What would you tell them in terms of, here's the differentiation, here's why we would come to you versus going direct?
Well, if you know the person, then you absolutely go direct. It doesn't change that at all. And in fact, what I would say is, if we're talking, let's take Black River Innovation Campus, for example. And if Chris knows someone immediately in this field that a business is looking for assistance with, he'll send them straight to there, never even opens the connectory. It's not designed for that level.
Okay.
But if you don't have someone in that circle, that list in your head or in a spreadsheet that organization regularly sends people to, that's when the connectory becomes an opportunity, because these are the people who have been vetted or who have been recommended by other community partners, by the connectory. And so that becomes your second level that you can immediately open this up, find an opportunity in a given category, find expertise or resources, and send that to the business that needs this. Or as a self-service, you can send this to the business themselves and say, hey, here is a list, a directory, you can search through these categories. But to your point, businesses don't always know what it is that they need.
Exactly.
And so that's where many of these folks, like Chris at Black River Innovation or any of these other business hubs that you named, they can be really helpful guides in helping a business really dig down to the root of their need, the root of their problem, and understand what category of solution they're looking for.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So it's really meant to enhance
and it's wonderful
power.
Because having this centralized directly across Vermont is so helpful. The other day I met someone who's building a biodigester in Rutland, and they're obviously they're trying to come up with a great product, but they have some regional constraints, limitations, right? Like they don't know people across the state, but obviously for a biodigester company to be successful, you've got to sell a lot across the state, because you have one or two in your neighborhood that you've done a pilot with. I think for them it'll be great if they come to Connectory and they get connected to 5-6 others across the state, right?
Similar concept,
and something like that, and get some advice there. So I think there is so much value I see in it, and thank you for sharing that to our group here.
And what I would add to that point as well is the other piece of feedback that I got early on, because one of the things I did as I was building this was I talked to a lot of people on all sides, the entrepreneurs and the businesses who are searching, the service providers and the expertise that they are looking for, as well as the community partners, these business hubs throughout the state, to get their input. And the product that we created is very different from what it would have if I had not spoken with anyone and simply gone and built this and then shared it. So having that community input was so important. And one piece of feedback that I got was, keep it very focused. As a directory, stay focused on business services, business expertise, and business needs. So that, to your point, is another differentiation area where you're not necessarily going to find gift wrapping service perhaps on this, or restaurants, unless perhaps they do catering for business events. So there needs to be a tie-in to what business owners need and are searching for.
So Will, thanks so much for telling us why Connectory is so important. Can you tell us how the whole platform works?
Sure, it's very simple, and I think I'll focus just on the side of the user, of someone going to the Connectory to look for a resource. So you would simply go to the Connectory, it's theconnectory.net. You'll open up the website, you'll see a list of different service providers and business resources below, as well as a couple of ways to filter through that for different categories like bookkeeping, marketing, IT, etc. So you look through that, you select the categories that you're searching for resources for within, and if you find something that looks like, oh, this is a good fit, and each of our listings, they show not just what are the services or the resources that a listing is providing, but also who is a good fit for this resource? What type of business is this a good fit for? So then there's simply a click to connect, a short form, you send that, it shows up in the email, and that becomes an email conversation with that resource or service provider. If you don't find what you're looking for, we also have a form there, and we always encourage people, if you don't find what you're looking for on the platform, fill this out. This is what allows us to go back to our community partners and say, hey, we've had several businesses that are looking for this type of resource or expertise in our community. Could you help us to find this, to source this for these businesses that are searching? And that's what helps to guide the growth of the connectory and to help us find the resources businesses really need.
Thanks, Will. That was a very, very, very useful tool. I'm probably going to use it a lot myself. Maybe to bring the conversation back home, one of the things we often hear about Vermont is it's very challenging for founders here. Access to capital, access to resources. If I flip the question and ask you, what is the one thing that you think that you could change here, or you would recommend changing here, that would make this a lot better?
Well, I think we've actually already spoken about one of those things, which is simply connection, helping to connect the communities and the individuals and the resources throughout the state. So a more interconnected ecosystem in Vermont to start with. But I'd say we've already covered that a little bit and some of the work that we're both doing to make that happen. So the second piece I would say is storytelling, making it more known and more understood about the work that is happening in the state, both what is being done to support businesses and founders in the state, as well as the great benefits that are happening when people are able to start small businesses here and to grow those in Vermont, to innovate here, to build here, and to grow within their communities in this state. I think the storytelling around that is something that could be a lot stronger. And so that's another area that I'd really like to see grow in Vermont in the next several years.
Wonderful. So you spoke about storytelling, Will?
Yes.
Can you tell us why storytelling is so effective in the journey of an entrepreneur?
If you don't have a story of how what it is that you are creating grows or benefits with the community, you don't have the buy-in from that community. And that's everything from funding to support to people reaching out to help you find an office space, for example, or that expertise that you need. The storytelling that helps a community to understand why building a small business in their town makes a difference. And this comes around to so many other aspects that Vermont struggles with right now, with housing, for example, with healthcare, with schools. There are many aspects where I feel like storytelling is missing opportunities to help people work together or to recognize benefits that will really come to their communities.
Wonderful. That was so profound, right? That this is so profound when Will you talk about storytelling, because it's not the first thing people think of. When they say, I want to change, people think of capital, they think of policy, they think of talent.
Right.
And I love why you said it is because this is something which is very learnable. This is something that is coachable, and each of us have our own stories.
Yes.
Right? So thank you for sharing that. And I think you've heard our story at Tuk2 many times now. Maybe if you can, and I wouldn't be smart if I don't ask you for advice when I have you here, right? So our Tuk2 builds communities by enabling neighbors to help neighbors, right? If you had to put on your business consultant hat, and what are the ways where you feel this has the possibility to make a big impact, and where do you see opportunities for us in Vermont?
Well, the problem that you're working to solve is simply connection. Again, it's similar to the connectory where you already have a population of people who greatly need support in order to remain healthy and happy in their own homes. And at the same time, I feel like culturally, there's a very strong emphasis in Vermont on helping your neighbors, of lending a hand, of support within your communities. And so if you can find the way to position yourself as the bridge within that, not just on 1 or 2 or 3 situations, but in a really broad sense, providing the tools that help the organizations that already exist to do that work themselves, because there are already organizations within our communities that are trying to do this work and having a great impact within their communities. How can you amplify that impact, amplify what already exists to create a larger impact.
Wonderful. That is such a good piece of advice, right? I mean, in the end of the day, we have a tool.
Right.
But there's already established organizations who are doing this so much well. And I completely agree with you. If we can help them become more efficient, more safe, more affordable,
Exactly.
I think this would be, so thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
And thank you, Will, for coming to the podcast. And, really, this was a really exciting one. And you are so kind and generous in sharing such a lot. So I want to thank you from our whole community, from all the people who are listening in. And before I let you go, maybe just the last question is, can you recommend a book, a podcast, or a movie, or anything that you'd feel add benefit to all of us?
Serviceberry. Robin Well Kimmer, Serviceberry. Robin Well Kimmer is a professor at SUNY College in upstate New York, or SUNY University, I believe.
Buffalo or?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one. But Serviceberry by Robin Well Kimmer, professor in upstate New York, SUNY University. And the book really, it's actually a very short book. It doesn't even take very long to read. I think a couple of hours if you're listening to it on audiobook.
Serviceberry.
But Serviceberry really speaks to the strength of shared abundance within communities.
Wow.
And creating that network of the relationships, the wealth of relationships more than of holding individual resources. And the real power that happens when those are effectively shared within a community, whether you're talking a neighborhood or a region. So
Wonderful.
That's what I would recommend.
Thank you so much. So Serviceberry it is. We've got a good recommendation for a book.
By Robin Well Kimmer.
Robin Well Kimmer. And thank you so much, Will, for
Absolutely.
this amazing
Thank you,
podcast.
Rustam.
And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.